Hang in there. That's Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show.
Welcome back to The Smylie Show, where Smylie and I were just having an off-camera discussion about dad bedtimes, and we said, you know what? It's off season. We're doing one episode a week. Let's just take it on the show. So where were we, Smylie? Jog my memory a little bit here.
Well, I was just saying to you how tricky sometimes it is as far as just how long it might take to get Anna Carter down for bed. And it's kind of been my role here, for the last 3 weeks is, I'm full-time getting Anna Carter to bed mode. But really it was, a good 5 months, 6 months where she did not want to do anything with dad at bedtime. Like we play all the way up until bedtime, but if I even come close to stepping through her door, she's like, "Daddy, no." And so it was always such a deflating feeling because, for a year, I'm the one putting her down with the bottle at night. I don't know what age that was, but I felt like that I was nailing bedtime. Like that was what I did. And then all of a sudden she's like, no, only mom. And so nice to be back in the fold, but also
there he is.
It kind of takes a second to get her down because we kind of go all over the place, to be honest, between storytelling, books.
It's so cyclical because I remember that same exact way for me until our second arrived, our baby girl Katie arrived, and then Walker. It was like I was the guy who always put down Walker, and Walker, what's a good word to use here? I manipulated is a little strong, but like he knew how to work Amanda for sure. Mm-hmm. And so she would spend a long time in that room. And then when I finally took over and I walked out of that room in like 3.5 minutes, it was like I was
you
like,
got Bob Knight coming in, he's
look at this guy. How do you do it?
No,
like the
silly
first time
business.
it was like it was an audible gasp. She's like, how'd you do that? I'm like, well, when you got it, you got it. Yeah. But now we've kind of hit a regression period, and it's like, Dad, you're no longer in the mix. I figured out that you knew how to get me to bed fast, and that's not how I want my bedtime to go. So Amanda's back in, and this has been now compounded by the fact that, as was the case when I was a young child, we are entering a big dinosaur phase. Loves dinosaurs, and of course, me having that soft spot of being a dinosaur kid, I'm trying to encourage it, right? So I got him this like prehistoric alligator. It's called a Purosaurus. It was like one of the largest alligators that ever walked on Earth. It was in South America. And this thing has like a row of daggers along its back. And so, it's like, hey, let's go to bed. Do you want to use your stuffy T-Rex to bed? No. I want the alligator. And then it's like, okay, can we put you down? It's like, no, Amanda, you have to sleep next to me. It's like, can we put the alligator outside the bed? No. So what happens is Amanda ends up laying in bed for like 90 minutes with an alligator toy digging into her back until she can successfully escape. So that's where we're at with bedtime.
Well, the good news right now with Anna Carter is that she's still in a crib. She doesn't realize that she can get out. Luckily enough for us, I think if she was a second kid, she would know that she can get out of the crib, but because there's no other big girl beds or big boy beds around, she just thinks that that's what's normal. So we're trying to keep her in the crib as long as we can, until she climbs out, because she could easily do it. She's a monkey, man.
That's Walker. His first night into bed was the night that Kadik arrived, which is an insane week because he figured he could get out of his crib, and then we tried to pack and play. He could get out of his pack and play, and at that point we had really nowhere else to go. Just all right, it's time to go to the bed, and then it was Kadik's arrived a week early, and now we're just doing everything at the same time. Joys of fatherhood. Huh?
I like similar to your Purosaurus. Is that what it was?
Purosaurus. Okay. Strange name for it. I don't know who named that alligator.
Kind of a little sus, by the way.
Little sus. Little sus. First couple times I read the name, I was like, am I saying this right? Am I getting this right?
It didn't feel right when I said it. I'll tell you that.
To segue from this to, we're not quite going to go in golf yet, because I had to just give you some sort of congratulations. Like I'm all-time high now. Did we get rid of Brian Kelly? Is this happening?
It's done. It's done. My favorite thing I've been sending to all my friends. This is, hold on, here we go. Let's see. It's a great meme. Very similar to the Pope. as they flash the smoke up. You got Death Valley. Check this out.
Yes. Yeah.
It's done. I mean,
time.
dude, we've been embarrassed too many times, and Kelly, I hope he goes on to have a great career as a politician or in TV, but it's time for that guy to not be coaching college football anymore. Does
he have like the lowest approval rating of any modern college football coach? I don't know of anyone who's like, yes, I really like Brian Kelly.
You follow him for like 3.5, 4 years, like you do. You see every press conference, you read everything he says. He's a CEO. He speaks awesome. Going from Coach O to him, it was like, oh my gosh, we have an adult in the room that knows how to speak, communicate. And so everybody's just wowed by all the big words that he could say. And we're like, this is awesome. We got somebody, a big guy in the room that can control it. And then after a while, you're like, wait, he just says the same thing. And it's really nothing. He doesn't ever say anything. It's just a whole lot of nothing. And it's like, oh, we got to fix it, and it never gets fixed. Nothing ever gets fixed. And constantly on the football field, when you watch him, directors of ESPN or whoever it is, they're really good about making sure that they show Kelly as much as possible, because he is an angry elf on the sideline every single game. It's just hard to root for the guy. He's never has a smile on his face. He's always just giving whoever, like whether it's a quarterback, like players, he just looks like he's not fun to play for.
Well, and that's the thing is that the ass chewings, so to speak, that Nick Saban was so famous for. When it's Nick Saban, it kind of carries a little bit of weight. When it's Brian Kelly, it doesn't have quite the same ring to it. For me, I mean, I just feel like
you just need there wasn't enough good to outweigh it. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, all those acts, any act like that is, difficult and abrasive, it works if you're winning. The moment you stop winning, it's kind of time. And I feel like that's the story of Brian Kelly.
It's a perfection thing with Saban, and because he wants the best out of his team and to be able to dominate the opponent. We never dominated an opponent. We won games by just outlasting them with talent. And that's basically all of our wins in the Brian Kelly era were that. We just were more talented than you. And any of our big losses, it was all just basically just coaching when we had talent that was similar to the other team. A&M actually, I felt like they had much more talent than we did last night. But man, it was fun. The Aggies. Shout out to the Aggies. If you're an Aggie fan, thank you so much. Most years I really want to beat you guys, but shout out to you guys for absolutely taking us down.
Every once in a while, a rival gives you a nice. There was also that nice sort of what goes around comes back around situation where the first guy that Brian Kelly fired was the strength and conditioning coach that ended up at A&M, and that Mike Elko referenced, in terms of the key piece of beating LSU late in games.
That guy only won 3 different national championships with 3 different coaches.
I'll say this, Smylie. A lot of people are kind of firing up the James Franklin rumor train. I don't love that for you.
No,
I feel like,
oh God, if we fired Franklin, send me the North Carolina visor.
Yeah, well, I think you got to look for a guy with proven NFL experience, a guy who's looking to build an NFL program at the collegiate level. And I'd really hate to see Bill Belichick go with what he's built in North Carolina. But I if he's going to LSU, I think I could handle that. I'd say, hey, get you a little purple visor. Good luck.
What if Miss Terry liked an offer she got? Wow. Not saying it would ever happen, but
wow. Wait a second. That had not even crossed my brain yet. Can you imagine a Nick Saban LSU return, like the final chapter?
I thought you were about to say, can you imagine Nick Saban? She's like, yeah, I actually can. It was awesome.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, of all the places that he would go, right? Like he really couldn't or shouldn't maybe go to any other LSU or any other SEC team rather. And it would feel weird, fits a different place in the country. It feels like he's kind of an SEC guy, but that's the one place where it's like, I've coached there before. I won a national championship there before. Why not go make that the final ride?
I mean, it'd be amazing. It's not going to happen. That would shock me. Once you live down in Jupiter for a year and a half and play golf down there and have the easy life of, I wouldn't say easy life. TV's not an easy life, but it's way less complicated than what he was doing.
Yeah. Well, let's see what Mysterio has to say about that.
You just see Texas in any game, and again, Kentucky used to be able to put up points in the past. 43.5 is crazy because it just feels like Texas is going to come in, play really good defense, and try to squeeze this game out. It'll be interesting to see because nothing got ailed from that victory last week. Texas is back. I'm just being facetious at this point. But if we see one of those performances, 17-14 Texas.
In the fourth quarter.
Yeah, come on.
Right? I mean, really. I mean, they got a gift last week.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It looks like the Bengals fantasy pieces are back. What did you make of that Joe Flacco performance on Thursday night? Turning back time.
Yeah, it was great for a guy like me with gray in the beard. I love seeing it. I love my representation. But at the end of the day, just from a wagering standpoint, if this continues, it'll give some consistency and it'll give some value back to those tools that you were mentioning on the Bengals.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Defense is above average this year. And I think big picture, they're going to be probably the most consistent moving forward. The problem I have is this guy, Trevor Lawrence, big picture. You got to take the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the ugly sometimes is real ugly. He is not comfortable in the pocket on a consistent basis, and that's a problem.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Very young team outside of Durant. They're going to be an impossible out in a 7-game series, and I'm predicting it right now. If the seeding lines up, you are getting the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. There's not another team in the West that's going to be as good as the Rockets are when we get to playoff time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
I'm going to bring this into golf, but it's the sports news of the week. It's just mind-blowing. The whole NBA gambling, fiasco, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to give the sort of the headline piece of the news where there are two separate things happening. There's the Terry Rozier, if that's even how you say his last name. Fixing is not the right word, but it's effectively saying, hey, I'm going to bet the under on various prop bets associated with me because I'm going to pull myself out of this game with injury.
Someone call it fixing.
That is a form of fixing.
I'm not saying that's the definition, but
right.
I think that may have actually just been a definition of fixing.
Well, and then there's the whole separate investigation that involves NBA coaches and former players and assistants, but that is focused on rigged card games, right? So we're going to set that aside for a moment because I think that what has happened here for a lot of sports, we saw friend of the show, Adam Schefter, report on a memo that the NFL sent out to all the teams as a reminder on gambling policies, is put a lot of sports on notice. You and I were talking as we prepared for the subject about Rob Manfred being asked about this on the baseball side and saying, hey, look, none of these leagues wanted gambling to come into their sport. But it was something that got legalized. It was sort of this necessary evil, probably is one way you could say it. But I think for them, if it's going to happen and we're looking at these different gambling operators, there is a net positive for us of working with them to identify databases, information on our gamblers to make sure that we know if someone is gambling on this that has a material impact on the outcome of our games. And so there's this sort of hey, this is where we are as a society, for better or worse, and what impact does this have on games that we love? So specific to this podcast, right, talking about golf, I did a little bit of light research here, just looking back at what can we remember in recent memory or just even in distant history of gambling and golf being intertwined in a potentially negative way. And so a lot of this comes out of things that surfaced in the year 2023. There was the book that Billy Walters published, Gambler: Secrets from a Life at Risk, where he alleges that Phil Mickelson called him from Medina during the 2012 Ryder Cup, attempting to place a $400,000 wager on the Americans to win the Cup, which good on Phil for not placing that, because this was, of course, the Miracle Medina, where the Europeans came back, one of the greatest comebacks in Ryder Cup history.
Did you read that book?
I did not read that book, but I read a lot of the excerpts from that book.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It'd
be an interesting read, right?
It would be an interesting read. I mean, I think it's one of those things where how much of an axe does Billy Walters have to grind? right? Like, does he have anything to lose by writing this book? Probably not if he's gone through all this sort of legal stuff already, but there is a little bit of, I'd like to maintain a public image. So how much of that is Billy giving you his spin and how much of that is really factual? Probably an interesting read nonetheless.
Well, let us know in the comments, folks. If you've read the book, give us a review, a little review out of 5.
Spark notes us.
Yeah, just let us know if we should read it.
So there's that, of course, but that was just an allegation, nothing proved factually there yet. Also in 2023, 2 Korn Ferry Tour pros, Jake Stiano and Vince India, were suspended for 3 and 6 months, respectively, for violating betting rules within the tour's integrity program. Now, India, as far as I can see or find via research, never spoke on that. But Jake Stiano, the 3-month suspension,
I don't know who that is. Jake Stiano?
Well, it's funny, bring us full circle. After the suspension, he played on the PGA Tour Americas this last year, made 16 starts and finished 34th in the Fortinet Cup standings. Only the top 10 earned their Korn Ferry Tour cards. So he's still playing, but on PGA Tour Americas. So Jake went on Ryan French's podcast, you probably better know as Monday Q Info on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And discussed, and he was suspended 3 months for a total of $116.20 of bets. He placed a $25 bet on Bryson DeChambeau to make birdie on a par 5 in a PGA Tour event in 2021, and then 3 other bets on DeChambeau during that match he played with Brooks Koepka. And so he said, this is his quote on the podcast: "I understand the principles. I understand you can't bet. They laid it out perfectly. I didn't deny gambling. I've accepted my punishment. It is what it is. Fair or not, people can argue that, but one of my biggest things is I want to make sure other guys understand exactly what happened so they don't make the same mistake, because it could be career altering." So interesting perspective from a guy who really didn't gamble that much, and the tour came down very hard on him via the policy they had. Marty Fish, this was an interesting one. This was at the 2023 American Century Championship in Tahoe, the celeb event you've covered the last 2 years. He was kind of in the running there, contending with Steph Curry coming down the stretch.
I remember this one. I remember this.
Spectator makes a bird call noise in the middle of his backswing. He snap hooks it.
Is it the same bird call guy from the Webb Simpson deal at Olympic? Same guy?
It's funny you say that, because that was my first guess. It's like, is this bird guy? He's popping around. He's maintaining he's extending his 15 seconds of fame.
Why a bird call?
I know. And honestly, I would have never thought anything of it until Marty later goes on Ryan Russillo's podcast and says he found out that the heckler had bet on Steph Curry, and a little bit of foreshadowing here, wondered why something like this hadn't happened more often in the game of golf. And so then a few months later, 2023 BMW Championship, Max Homa was paired with Chris Kirk. Chris Kirk plays first. A fan shouts at him to leave his 18-foot birdie putt short. And then in the middle of Max Homa's putting stroke, yells at him to yank his 5-foot birdie putt. Max makes it. They exchange words. After the round, Max is asked about it. He said that they gathered from the guy's friend, they had $3 riding on that bet for that birdie putt. And Max said his quote was, "I love that people can gamble on golf, but this is one thing I'm worried about." And then just to kind of close these, and then I want to pose a series of questions to you. But then a week later, Rory McIlroy and Jon Rahm were asked at the 2023 Tour Championship about that Max incident. Rory says, "We've talked about this at the board and the pack level for a few years, and it's a bit of a slippery slope because I don't think there's any, maybe basketball and you can sit courtside, but I think it's a different environment where people can really affect the play out here. So look, as long as it's policed the right way and as long as there's measures put in place for hopefully things like what happened to Max Homa last Saturday not to happen, we're all for people out here having a good time, being able to put something on an outcome. But as long as they don't feel like they can come here and influence that outcome, I think that's important." Rahm went on to say, "I think the tour maybe should look into it because you don't want it to get out of hand. It's very easy in golf. If you want to affect somebody, you're so close. You can yell at the wrong time, and it's very easy for that to happen. I feel like we hear it every single round. That happens way more often than you guys may hear. I mean, it's very, very present. And golf spectators are very close. And even if they're not directly talking to you, they're close enough to where if they say their buddy, I bet you $10 he's going to miss it. You hear it, so it happens more often than you think." So, Smylie, here's where I want to start, is just on the competitor side, right? Because this is the whole issue that's stemming from the NBA situation, is that we know that you all played money games dang near every time you had a practice round set up. I mean, that's
a good point. Yeah, I mean, gambling is a big part of golf, right? That's
so. But did you ever feel a worry or concern that a player's gambling habit was bleeding into the actual competition?
you see this team, and they're talking about A.J. Brown still. It's an injury. We want him. Are we going to ship him? This situation has to play out in the sense of, I think he wants to be there, but at the end of the day, you can't disrupt the locker room every single week. And the Eagles need him to be there if they're going to make a Super Bowl run.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The playoff matchups for Asher Genty are not great. We start to look ahead. I know it's early, but it's not that early. So Genty, I think, is still a better long-term guy than it is maybe a redraft situation, especially with the schedule maps out. But I don't see a lot of games where he's potentially in a situation where the Raiders are ahead and running the football a ton, if you know what I mean. It's kind of tough out there for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Are they chanting? Is it over? Does
They'll
he
be
accept
gone
the
by
resignation?
halftime. No,
Are they chanting fire?
Probably.
Kelly, clap,
it would
clap,
be. It would be warranted. It would be. I mean, you won a national championship in 2019. You're getting top 5, top 10 recruiting classes each and every year. You had the quarterback back to back to back to back. How many more chances are you going to get? I mean, really, what are we doing here?
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Very young team outside of Durant. They're going to be an impossible out in a 7-game series, and I'm predicting it right now. If the seeding lines up, you are getting the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. There's not another team in the West that's going to be as good as the Rockets are when we get to playoff time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
It seems, I mean, crazier things will happen, but it seems like that would never be a worry of mine for a player because it's so cutthroat, like these guys have guaranteed salaries on the PGA Tour. You don't, you're fight. Every single shot is so important. Every week is so important. Maybe if I guess a scenario that you can play out in your head, if somebody locks up their card, there's no worry about them losing their card. That would be the player that you could say that would be more susceptible to like, no, these guys take a lot of pride in what they do. And I don't think the 5 families are necessarily quite into the golf scene quite yet. We talk about the mob. So I don't see it. And when you kind of mentioned too, just the rules and regulations that the PGA Tour has, it's clearly black and white. When you just talked about, a Corn Ferry Tour player, Jake, I can't even remember his name. Yeah, Stiano. $25 bets. I think most people would say like that's a very low wager, like a non-effective wager that anybody should have any concern, whether that should have any effect on any outcome or if you got a tip. Your biggest worry would be is if a player has like inside information and that's when they're gambling. And so a $25 wager wouldn't necessarily sound the alarm bells, but there's the PGA Tour definitely has very, very strict rules and regulations. It's something that's you got to sign, before every single year, what you're signed up for when it comes to just the gambling regulations that they have. But you also think about the finances that the PGA Tour have, the networks have, even just players having individual deals with these gambling companies too. That's constantly something that's being put in front of consumers. Hey, if they get you, if you hit the green here, these are the odds. So it's constantly being floated on broadcasts. It's being talked about too. Even with the PGA Tour, they have their own individual deals with different gambling outlets too. So it's one of those tough situations because there's so much money in gambling that the gambling companies are spending with these different leagues that it puts the players in really tough spots because really they are the ones that get the negative effects from consumers gambling on me versus Charlie, and we're the ones that have to deal with the negative backlash of playing bad that day. It's like, hey, you suck. It's like I put you in my lineup or I had you head to head. So really the players get the backlash of it all. And I guess it's important because the more eyeballs that watch the sport, the better. And unfortunately, sometimes that means gambling, and that's what keeps people's attention. As right or wrong as that is, it's true.
we've had gambling companies sponsor our show at various intervals, and so we're not here, as some sort of moral police saying, what's right or what's wrong. I just think more so in thinking about the specific topic and this piece of news, the first place my brain goes to is, should I be worried about this on a golf level? And I think you've done a good job of segmenting this of what potential places of worry could we have. And the first one, which you stated, I think is the most important, which is these guys are they're contractors. They are not on a guaranteed salary, at least in most leagues. But I mean, the ones that are playing every week in, week out to keep their tour cards, even if a guy was in deep with some bookie, it doesn't really behoove that bookie to have that guy play bad and play his way off the tour if he's trying to use him as some sort of gambling pawn. There's no math here that results in have player play bad intentionally, in my opinion, at least from as far as what I can see. And so, and these guys are on a week in, week out basis, needing to continue to play good to make the money they need to earn. If they're playing poorly, that really doesn't help them in any way, shape, or form. I also think too that where we started this topic is there is a sort of ethos of the game of golf of, even if it's a friendly dollar wager, gambling's been a part of golf since the game was invented, right? And it's always about betting on yourself, right? I mean, every time I go out and play Hope Valley with the buddies, we have a game going, and it's never okay, let me hedge this here so I can bet against myself so I can throw this thing. It's always, hey, put money on yourself to play good, and it feels like that is the ethos at a tour pro level and these practice rounds, things like that. So I think that it's hard to see guys changing a mindset or mentality away from that, given that their whole life it's been that's sort of the way they're playing the game. The third thing is the fan thing, which I do have serious worries about. I mean, I'm actually kind of surprised in going back and doing this research that since 2023, there hasn't really been any sort of material issue. I did see a couple things at 2024 in the U.S. Open. Someone told Bryson they had him to shoot, to post a score under 70.5. They had Victor Hovland to make a cut. They yelled it to him across the ropes, something like that, but nothing that was as egregious as what we saw at the 2023 BMW Championship. But as gambling does become more and more ingrained in the sport, in every sport really, do you have concerns either that have been voiced by tour pros you talk to or other people in the space that hey, this hasn't been a thing yet, but this might start to be a thing pretty soon?
Well, I think the fans can get up close and personal and can affect play. So that definitely would be an issue that you would be concerned about. But also you got to think about this, if you put yourself in that scenario as a fan, kind of awkward to try to do that, right? If you're really close up and you got all these people around you, the next thing you know, you're yelling at somebody's backswing, dude, everybody's going to look at you. It's going to be the most awkward you've ever felt in your entire life.
Very young team outside of Durant. They're going to be an impossible out in a 7-game series, and I'm predicting it right now. If the seeding lines up, you are getting the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. There's not another team in the West that's going to be as good as the Rockets are when we get to playoff time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
I don't want people to stop discounting how good of a coach Rick Carlisle is, and I think they're going to find a way to get it done. I think they're going to be better than people think, and I also think if that's the case, then I'm fading someone in that division. You know who I'm fading, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks, who have now cut 2 players this year so that they can bring back both Antetokounmpo to play with Giannis.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
People who filed it are actually representatives of Chicago, so they're from the city. They're kind of saying, this is really going to cripple the industry if we do this even more. I think it's really important when we talk about this stuff because so many places want to keep taxing sports betting more and more and more, which is well within their right, but there gets to a point where the bubble bursts and sports books either don't want to do business or they change the way they do it by passing it down to the customer.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Football contest season is back, and so is the Las Vegas Football Contest Show. Season 2, the sharpest football contest show in the land. Focusing on all 3 Circus Sports contests and the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, we handicap the games and release our contest picks every week of the season. Featuring Super Contest champions Brady Cannon, James Salinas, and former NFL player Mike Pritchard, all team will have you prepared this season like none other. Check us out every weekend right here on SportsGrid.
We're going to talk about amateurism now. Something that this was a raging debate that happened while we took our brief hiatus between the Ryder Cup, when we kind of resumed a few weeks later after the short paternity leave for you. And so really just to kind of set the table for your thoughts on this kind of caught fire during the 2025 U.S. Mid-Am, where I believe 7 of the 8 quarterfinalists had played professional golf at some point in time, 2 of whom logged a combined 154 starts on the Korn Ferry Tour. The eventual winner, Brandon Holtz, he played collegiate basketball at Illinois State before pursuing pro golf. The 2024 winner, Evan Beck, also a reinstated amateur. And then it's interesting, too, even coming off the conversation we just had with Mason Howe, where you're looking like Mason Howe's got NIL deals with Ping, FootJoy, Titleist, Holderness and Bourne. Jackson Coyvin's got deals with Titleist, FootJoy, Foresight Sports. So you're talking about
what is amateurism now?
What is amateurism anyway? And then I guess the final piece I'd say on this before I kind of pass it to you is the one that really stoked the flames, of course, was Colton Oast saying that he's going to apply reinstatement as an amateur, as a guy who made more than $4 million. Love Colton Oast. And love the content play, by the way. We're in the content game. This is great content. He made more than $4 million on the PGA Tour. Last played a full scheduled season in 2015-16. And his last event he played was the 2020 Waste Management Open. And then, of course, joined CBS a couple years later as a full-time analyst. So before I ask you any specific questions, Smylie, the way these things are going right now, I just want to just double check and make sure you don't have any announcement to make regarding your amateur professional status.
If I were to turn amateur again, I would have a list of requests, which is
fair.
Number 1, always I need to have a breakfast ball. If I get a breakfast ball and then an opportunity to have enough time to get an airstrike in the middle of the round to make sure I can get the levels back right, then I think I'd consider it.
I love this. I think that's how you submit the application. You're like, here's my credentials. Here's the last time I played a full season, and there's actually as an addendum, here are my demands. And I think that'll go over really well with the USGA.
Breakfast ball and just an airstrike.
Airstrikes. Yeah. man of simple tastes. I could all get behind that. But I mean, where's the line for you here?
You made a great point just about how high school kids now or college kids are getting paid. So amateurism has changed. It's changed in college football being the main one. That sport is insane. It feels like semi-pro football now with college golf, not necessarily being impacted as much, but you see some top players definitely being paid to be able to play at the amateur level. So how does this affect mid-am golf? Because my perception of mid-am golf as when I was in college or even before that, when it was, it hadn't been around forever. Mid-am golf, it was established. The mid-am was, it feels like that it hasn't been here forever. Am I way off in that? Like mid-am is, help me out here. When was it established? Can you do a little Google search?
Yeah. You keep opining while I do a search on, Yeah,
I guess it does make sense that.
Okay, 1981. How about that?
Okay. It felt like it was going to be longer
than that. That was first U.S. Mid-Am.
I felt like it was longer than that. Anyways, I would say that where we are now is that if you didn't make it to the PGA Tour, I really don't have that big of an issue unless you were like a lifer on the Korn Ferry Tour. To me, it's the question of when did you put in your reinstatement for your amateur status back? I feel like the clock starts when you press that button. Now, for instance, for me, I don't think I've played since 2021. And I don't think my clock should start until I press the button. So as soon as I put in my letter of, hey, I want to be an amateur again, it should be from then. So I should have to wait, let's say it's 7 years from now, instead of the clock being the last tournament I played. That would be the one thing I would say. It's like, okay, I understand things are different now, but that would be one area that I would start in, is probably just when the whole clock starts with amateurism.
Well, it's perfect that you brought that piece up, because actually Alan Bassable for golf.com wrote a very helpful article on this topic recently as this debate was raging on. And I'm just going to read you some sections of it to detail the USGA's process, because I think that helps inform the conversation. So according to the USGA, roughly 800 US-based pros, including not only tour professionals, but also club and teaching pros, annually apply for reinstatement, and virtually all of them are approved. Pros who want their AM status back need to only answer a couple dozen questions on an application. Application fees $200. Among the info they got to supply are tours they played on, results, cuts made, prize money won, 2 people who can attest to the accuracy of the info. The minimum waiting period for a pro seeking reinstatement is 6 months from their last pro action. But more decorated tour pros, the cooling off period can take years. So this is a quote from, I don't have the name of the guy who was in the story, but his last name's Winter, and I think he's a senior official with the USGA.
Craig Winter.
Quote, there you go. The more success you have, the more that you would be asked to wait from whenever your last breach was. And the weight that we put on that is, it's hard to just kind of put into words specifically, but if you played on a major tour and had membership, you're going to wait quite a bit longer than someone who played mini tour golf and won cash prizes or prizes above $1,000, the limit in the current rules. The question was posed in this article: has a pro ever been denied reinstatement? Not as far as Craig Winter can tell. They looked back through the archives. No one's ever been denied reinstatement. So then the hypothetical is posed: what would happen if Scotty Scheffler wanted his amateur status back? And Scheffler falls into what the USGA calls its national prominence category. So in other words, players of large repute. For pros in this class, it's a pretty easy decision. This is, again, a quote from Craig Winter: I'm very confident that Scotty, should he choose to apply or someone in this situation, he'd receive a phone call that would say, Scotty, unfortunately, you fit the national prominence category and you're not eligible. So that's just a series of information there on the way they process these things. But I do think there's a little bit of a nebulous line that's drawn there. And I wonder too, Smylie, what the goal is of pros that are trying to kind of get their amateur status back, right?
Competition, man. Competition.
Competition.
We miss competition. It's as simple as that.
But you know, I think for some it's like, what is it? You know, of course it's a competition itself, but it's also like, what does that attach you? So in the example of the mid-am, that you know, player for you know the recent history gets an exemption into the Masters, right? So it's got a nice little kind of, you know,
hard to win the mid-am, but
hard to win the mid-am. So but if it becomes a thing where the mid-am is littered with these ex-pros, and Augusta National's viewing that as, is this really in the spirit of the way we set up this exemption to award the pure amateur golfer? Like, does that change? I don't know.
No,
like,
it does.
You know,
I'm not against the whole thing. I mean, I think it's just the top level. Like, I think the Colt one's obviously like debatable when you've made as much money as he has on the PGA Tour, you know, played as long as he did on the tour. There's going to be people that are upset about that, and I can understand why. You know, from my standpoint, if I wanted to put my amateur status back, I don't think I should be able to get it back because I've won on the PGA Tour. But I also, like, I there's nowhere for me to play golf besides member guest and members where it doesn't even feel right playing in those anyways. And I can't get any starts in PGA Tour events. And I guess you can maybe try to get sponsors invites over to Asia or wherever you can try to get starts. There's just nowhere to play for someone like Colt or I. So I can understand that why Colt would want to try to get his AM status back. If you got to play, you know, by the way, the mid-am circuit's fantastic. There's some incredible events, Seminole, Pine Valley, you got the mid-am,
the Crum Cup. Yeah, there's a ton of them.
There's some great events. Sure, I would love to compete and play in a couple of those, but and to think that like Colt or I are playing at that level that we played on the PGA Tour, well, that's not true. We're definitely not getting nearly as many reps. I would say, gosh, I mean, the amount of practice. I haven't done a chalk line since I've stopped playing. So I haven't done a putting drill practically in 4 years. So we're talking like severe, just lack of being able to touch it as much as I did.
This is a guy we should be adding. And if you add him this week, you loved life, because he was coming off not just a great Sunday last week when we were ahead of that curve, but also a great Thursday night football as well. So last week, 7 for 9 for 164 and a touchdown. This week on Thursday, 5 for 5, 77 and a touchdown. He didn't even play the first 2 weeks of the year, and he's already a top 10 tight end in scoring, if you can believe it.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Travis Hunter, Joe, is a part-time wide receiver. As I've told people from the moment he was drafted, there is zero chance long-term that they'll continue to do this. In terms of playing offense and defense, they're going to have to pick a position with him. Brian Thomas, he was unbelievable. Talking to the Jaguars about him last season, he was so far ahead of schedule where they thought he'd be super smart. He had a wrist injury, by the way. We need to mention that, Joe, earlier this season.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
SMU is undefeated. You got Louisville that knocked off Miami. Miami has one loss. There's multiple teams that potentially can make a run for an ACC championship. So their backs are still against the wall. Like, Georgia Tech is not a shoo-in right now just because they're undefeated, because they still have to play Georgia at the end of the year as well. Even though it's out of conference, that can knock them out of the playoff.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
$17,848 have been bet on this question, Joe, at Kalshi. How many pro football games will Taylor Swift attend this season?
They average an average of 9.3 games during this season here, and a lot of that has to do with her reduced touring schedule, and this maybe being his final NFL season.
Incredible stuff here.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Gosh, I don't know where you draw the line. Is it the amount of PGA Tour starts? Is it how much money you've made on the PGA Tour? Because I definitely feel like there's a line that crosses for just the general public to be looking at the mid-am and be like, hold on, that one's a red flag. And like, I think most people will agree that when they see Colt's name in the mid-am, they're going to see that. And I don't. It's not that I don't think that Colt shouldn't be an amateur. It's just that when you've made $4 million, it's just hard to justify it. But I also understand the reason why. Like, he wants to be the Walker Cup captain. He wants to, he's already got a decorated amateur career, which I could totally understand wanting to add to that too, because I think they could pick him to be the Walker Cup captain without the being an AM. But I can understand that they've never had an AM not be the captain. So you could see it from that standpoint.
Man, it's so interesting hearing you talk about this, because, the line of thought of the proposal that I'd make is, could you divide it to where there's like a mid-am circuit that is retired professionals, and there's a mid-am circuit that's just pure true amateurs. But even there, as you're talking about this, it reminds me of another sort of thing that the USGA is embroiled in, the ball rollback. It's like, where does the ball rollback stop, right? Like, if you're playing with a regular ball throughout, through your junior events till you get to high school, and then all of a sudden you're playing, USGA sanctioned events, you have to switch to this ball. It's like, where's the cutoff there? And if I was a retired pro that, maybe just played Korn Ferry Tour, and I did have an affinity for competition and desire to get back out there on the amateur level, robbing me of the ability to play against pure amateurs that are the best of the game would stink. So it's like, how do you?
But we have full-time jobs, man. Like Colt's. I mean, he's got the podcast. He's got SiriusXM. He's got CBS. So like, he's busy. And like, another example of like outside of Colt, like John Peterson, garage business. Like, played plenty plenty of times on the PGA Tour. Had his card for quite some time. Incredible golfer, a really great amateur career as well. Was a Walker Cup snub, and also had a chance to win the U.S. Open as a pro, and almost won as an amateur on the Nationwide Tour. Like, an incredible player, and he got his amateur status back and almost qualified for the U.S. Open this past year. So, like, he's also another player. And then Bobby Wyatt, also a number one amateur in the world at one point, got his PGA Tour card. He's back as an amateur. So there is a cycle of PGA Tour players getting their AM status back, and it does show me that, okay, I technically could do it, but I'm just not there yet. I think the PGA Tour win thing just always sits in the back of my brain, because people ask me all the time if I do it, and the PGA Tour win always for me just sticks in the back of my head of like, dude, you're a pro, like, stay a pro. And I don't know. That's where I'm at.
Is it just that? Like, is it just shame's not the right word, but just is it just the bad optics around I won on the PGA Tour and I'm applying for reinstated AM status that would hold you back? Like, I guess my question,
like being a pro. I like the idea of being a pro. You know what?
Okay.
Turning pro was a really cool deal for me. Having success as a pro, failing as a pro, all of it. It just to me, I enjoyed the experience a ton, and I just value being a professional golfer.
Do you how much do you miss high leverage competitive golf? Like,
yeah,
a lot.
I mean, that's what you practice and train for. Any athlete will tell you that when you're in the heat of the moment and you can't feel your arms, can't feel your legs, but you're in this flow state and you don't know how you're able to do what you're doing at such a level. Like, how are you making these 30-foot putts? How are you hitting these high cut 7-irons with water on the right side, and you're just sauteing one into the corner of the green? You just know how to do it because you train over and over and over again. That's the part I miss. Definitely the competition, but still, I don't put the reps in. Like I told somebody the other day when I was playing, like it takes me till about like the 16th hole sometimes to like get the feeling of how to hit a certain shot, you know, because I know how to do it, but my body and just the amount of times that I've had an opportunity to rep something, it's just not there. I don't have the reps. And so there's days I play really well. There's days where I'm like, I would like as far as like making the mid-am top 64, like I'd be hanging out with the dudes in the back, man. Like we'd be drinking a beer. Like we're outside the cup by 10. Like there's days where golf is like that for me.
Well, and I wonder, would playing mid-am golf scratch that itch for you? Or would you rather just do a random mini tour event or something like that? Like, you know, or is it like, hey, I'm good with not scratching that itch ever again?
I still am not over keeping score and just being defined by a score. I don't think I've played around really. Maybe I could count on my, maybe 4 or 5 different times where I feel like I know what I'm at during the round. Where constantly for years and years and years, all I cared about what I was in relation to par. Over the last 4 or 5, I don't really know where I'm at till the end. And I programmed my brain to not really care what I'm at. I generally know what I'm at, but it's not like, okay, this putt is to get to 6 under, or this putt is to stay at even. I'm like, all right, I'm just out here having fun. If I make the putt, great, on to the next hole. And that's where I'm at now with the game of golf. I'm not defined by a score, and I don't think I want to be defined by a score again, because I hated my judgment of the score, hated everybody else's judgment of the score and me. And I hated that at the end. So I'm like, I'm still like inching my way back to feeling like golf, and the score and just the overall pressure of just playing the game, you know, all that competition of like, I love the competition, but that aspect, I don't think I'm quite there yet.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting. I did not expect this.
So I don't keep a handicap. I don't keep a handicap because I don't want anybody going into my thing and be like, hey, what did this guy shoot? I just like, I don't care for people to know what I'm shooting. It's like I'm out there just to like try to improve improving every single time I play golf is like that's fun for me.
You know, that's so interesting because that was exactly where I was going to go next, remembering that you'd said that on the show of just what it felt like to maintain a handicap. And I think a lot of that does go hand in hand with the fact that you're a true winner. Like you're forever. That is how people are going to define you and be able to speak to you in that context and go and look at your gin profile and do all these sorts of things. You're like, I don't care to do that.
If you watch a Mavericks game, every single play he's arguing with the referees. I mean, if I was
like
a
this,
ref,
his hands are up. It's like, dude, everyone else is halfway up the floor right now, and you're still back here arguing.
Yeah. I mean, I would tee him up. There is no doubt in my mind, Gabe, the NBA's got to go to these refs and say, listen, you know what? Swallow the whistle with him.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
I am willing to bet on Wemby is a triple-double ladder season-long market. I did this actually with Caitlin Clark, who had a triple-double in Game 1 and then spent the rest of the season injured. I hope that does not happen with Victor Wembanyama. 3 triple-doubles at plus 165 should be absolutely no problem for Wemby. Had 2 his rookie season, 1 last year prior to the injury.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
It is exactly why, like you said, Donnie, this time of year is the absolute best in sports. And first off, the NBA returned to NBC. And hearing that theme music, seeing Mike Tirico back on the call, seeing Michael Jordan on the screen, it just felt right? Like an old friend that you haven't seen in decades that walks back into your life.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
People who filed it are actually representatives of Chicago, so they're from the city. They're kind of saying, you know, this is really going to cripple the industry if we do this even more. I think it's really important when we talk about this stuff because so many places want to keep taxing sports betting more and more and more, which is well within their right. But there gets to a point where the bubble bursts and sports books either don't want to do business or they change the way they do it by passing it down to the customer.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The latter half of that statement is one that is exceptionally healthy and one that I connect back to some of the stuff that Scottie Scheffler said at the Open Championship this last summer that everyone, just balked at and thought it was the craziest thing of all time. Like he doesn't want to win. He doesn't care about winning trophies. Like, no, it's actually quite the opposite. He cares about every single shot, the process that he's going through. Like he cares about the process of getting better. And if that at the end of the week, that results in 4 scores that have him up there at the lowest score of the entire tournament, hoisting a trophy, great, fantastic. He's going to be really happy about that. He's going to celebrate that. But it's the results-oriented approach in golf or in life is one that's always going to set you up for a lack of fulfillment. The one that's process-oriented is forever going to be the most fulfilling. So I think that's, in a way, it's a beautiful thing to think about it. And it also has absolutely nothing to do about the conversation about reinstating the amateurs that we've been having thus far, but an interesting one nonetheless.
Yeah, most certainly. And I mean, it would be a wild journey to see my man Colt getting back to the Masters, and this time not turning that thing down. Make yourself at home there at Augusta. Go get in what's the cab? Butler. It's not Butler Cabin. What's the
Butler Cabin, right?
No, it's the one with where the crow's nest.
Oh, the crow's nest. Yeah. That's that. Honestly, listen, if you're in the golf content business, you should be rooting as hard as you can for Colt Knost because that storyline would be amazing.
I would love it.
Oh, it'd be so good.
The haters would be out in full force.
So good. It would be so good. Be a lot of angry bot Twitter accounts that were posing as they got some Twitter account that's a spinoff of some random guy's name. I can't stand it. Those people being mad would make me happy. So I love that. Well, there you have it. That was a nice little rundown of amateurism. Got a nice little conversation with Mason Howell.
Yeah.
Got to talk a little golf gambling.
Do you remember Omar Uresti?
Oh, yeah.
That was the one that always pissed off the PGA professionals because he got his PGA professional deal. He taught a bunch, kind of like he was the Michael Block before Michael Block, and he always qualified for the PGA Championship. And so it always made the PGA teaching professionals upset. It's like this guy he played on tour for however many years. Like it's kind of a different debate because we're talking the USGA versus the PGA.
No, but I think it's the exact same, Smylie, because I think it's one of those things where if you told me there was a mid-am circuit that it's just high level competitive events, right? And yeah, you get to hoist a trophy at the end of the week, but like really it's just, there's no exemptions into other tournaments. It's just, you're playing an amateur circuit. I think most pure true amateurs that never turn pro would be thrilled to show up and play against a Colton Oast or a Smylie Kaufman, because how cool is that? This guy teed up on the PGA Tour and I get to test myself against that guy every week. Here's why I think the disconnect happens, or where people get upset, is there is the Masters invitation. There are exemptions into all these different majors that for most people, I mean, it's people teeing up for US Open qualifying. It's like, that's all they care about is the end result. It's like, they don't care about, playing against certain people. It's like, I think I can play in the Masters. So I'm going through all these things. I'm trying to do that. For Omar Uresti, I think it's the same thing in a different way. You got a bunch of guys who've been folding shirts all year long, and here's their one tournament where they get a chance to go play in a major, the PGA Championship, and they got to tee up against a guy who's played on the PGA Tour already. So, of course, that's frustrating in that context. But if it was a different context where they just get teed up against that guy, and at the end of the week, one of them's hoisting a trophy, I think it would feel a lot cooler. But I think and that's why I say I'd just be really interested at some point if these sort of reinstatements reached a tipping point where, just theoretically, an Augusta National said, you know what, this isn't in the original intent of why we were handing out the exemption. We were trying to reward pure amateurism. So if they're not doing that,
it would be
then we're
Augusta,
not going to give an exemption.
It would be an Augusta type to, because amateur golf is so important to Augusta National. You've seen it in so many different events that they award invitations to, the Latin American, you get the drive, chip, and putt now. I mean, I know that's not a great example, but still amateur golf and Bobby Jones and the history of that place is definitely in their roots. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's interesting.
It really is. And I think this is what, the last thought I'll provide on this before we've gone well over a lot of time for this episode, but just is that I think this is what makes the game of golf so beautiful, is that there are all these different sort of intricacies of how we view it, and professional versus amateur, and like this whole conversation, while it frustrates many and it gets people arguing, it does kind of illustrate that it's not just as black and white as like there are just these scaled levels of competition. And the better you play, you go up, and then it's it. Like, you start talking about like football, college football. There's not some like storied amateur football, circuit that like is like some guy, like one guy a year gets to go play in the NFL for one game, because so it's that's what I think is kind of wild and cool about golf.
They got to go win and execute, and they can't be inconsistent. And that's the thing. It's like Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, really consistent. And then who is that fourth question mark? And there's been inconsistencies throughout. Hey, Michigan goes out to the West Coast and gets manhandled, and then they come back and then they win. Like, who's the consistent one that is the fourth?
The Bobby Carpenter Show, only on SportsGrid.
We're going to have bet tracking for the first time. If you have a FanDuel account, you will be able to track your bet on the Prime Video games. And tonight, if you are part of the ESPN Mega Content Service, we understand from an organization called Antenna that 2 million people at least have the ESPN Mega Content or Unlimited service. You will be able to track your bets also on tonight's NBA coverage. So this is the beginning of a major new era for basketball on television.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Like Marchand said, they're all a bunch of dirtballs, so I fit in with them. You know what I mean? Remember, like, the Phillies baseball team, like, with Kroc and Dykstra and all those guys? Like, yeah, they're just a bunch of dirtballs, right? And that's what the Panthers are. They're all the same. Like, they all like to drink. They're all tough. They're all dirty in the corner. You know what I mean? They'll all do whatever it takes to win, but that's why they've won 2 cups in a row.
In-game live only on SportsGrid.
For him and Signetti are the most Spurrier-like personalities, Spurrier-like head coaches, and Signetti's locked up. And you know what? And Ole Miss could very well lock Lane Kiffin up, but he will always be a fighting under. At Ole Miss, you will always be a little bit of an underdog because who you're playing. At Florida, you don't ever have to be an underdog because of their resources.
The Bowden Blitz, only on Sports.